The next morning, I awoke at my usual early hour. I had forgotten about my predicament until I pulled back the single sheet that I used to cover me during summer months. I briefly examined my breasts to see if they had come loose anywhere along the edges, but found that the adhesive was as strong as ever. The makeup had blended the skin tone and textures so perfectly that, in most places, I couldn't even distinguish where the breast form ended and my real skin began. I got up and out of bed and felt the pull of the breasts as their weight stretched the skin on my chest. I put my hands to my waist and felt the corset there. I had forgotten about it, also. I guess that I was getting used to the constriction. I put my hand up to scratch my head and encountered the rollers there. I had forgotten about them too. So I went into the bathroom that I shared with Carol, after knocking first and receiving no answer. I used the toilet and then washed my hands and face thoroughly. Feeling a little better, I put on the fluffy slippers and robe and went down to have breakfast. As usual, I was the first one down. I got out the bacon and was about to fry a pan full, but I remembered the lesson of last night's dinner and reduced the amount of bacon that I put in to cook. I put on the apron that I had worn last night because the grease would be splattering everywhere. When the bacon was cooked, I laid it out on a paper towel that would absorb the excess grease, and poured out most of the grease from the pan, leaving only enough to cook my eggs. I popped a couple of slices of bread into the toaster before cooking my eggs. Instead of my usual 3 eggs, I made 2 for myself. Just as I cracked the shells, Mom came in. "Good morning, Crystal. How did you sleep?" "Fine, Mom." "Wonderful. Carol will be right down." "As long as you're cooking, dear, why don't you make an egg for me, and one for your sister?" "Okay, Mom." Usually, Mom would take over from me as soon as she came in. Instead, she took the OJ from the refrigerator and after setting the table, sat down to await her breakfast. When the toast popped up, I put 2 more slices in. I turned the 4 eggs, waited several seconds, and then dished them up, along with several slices of bacon, onto the 3 dishes that I had taken from the cupboard. Carol came in as I was finishing and came over to me. She wrapped her arms around me and squeezed. "Good morning, little sister," she said. "Good morning, big sister," I said, a bit sarcastically. She giggled and helped me carry the dishes, with the eggs and the toast, over to the table. We talked as we ate. Conversation mostly consisted of instructions to me on how I had to act and talk in order to pass as a girl. I didn't so much want to pass as a girl, as I wanted to avoid detection of being a boy. If anybody learned of my true identity, I would never live it down. I remembered that in the 5th grade, Jimi Hendrake had peed in his pants when called upon to answer a question by the teacher. Kids still kidded him about one of his life's most embarrassing moments. And that was just a simple bodily function accident. I could only imagine what I would have to live with. After we had eaten, Mom said, "Crystal, thank you for making breakfast. Why don't you go take a bath while we clean up? I'll fix your hair later." "Okay, Mom. I need help with my corset though." "Carol, would you help your sister again?" "Sure, Mama." "Thank you." "Okay, girls, let's get going. We have a lot to do. Your Aunt Jessica will be here in a couple of hours." Carol and I went to my bedroom. After running the water for a bath, I removed the nightgown and turned so that Carol could untie the corset. It felt so wonderful to be free of the restricting garment. Carol took the opportunity to fondle my breasts again. She said, "I can't get over it. They're so perfect. The boys won't be able to take their eyes off of them tonight. I got into the tub as soon as she had left. Unknown to me, Carol had put something into the tub that had created a coating of bubbles on the bath. And the water had a different feel to it. I relaxed in the tub, enjoying the warm water. I was careful not to get my hair wet as I washed my body. I washed my new breasts even though they were not real and didn't really need washing. Although I couldn't feel anything as I touched them, I knew that they were being handled because each movement pulled on the skin of my chest. Even the tiniest movement alerted the nerve sensors in the skin on my chest. I used the tiny pink razor that Carol had given me to make sure that my legs were smooth and free of hair. I checked over the rest of my body and removed some hair stubble that I found. I ran the razor over my arms. I had very little hair on my body anyway, but I wanted to remove all traces yesterday. I had been uncomfortable as the hairs around my penis got yanked with the normal movements of having my genitals pulled backwards, so I trimmed it all off. No one would be seeing down there anyway. When I had finished, I got out of the tub and dried myself with the large bath towel. On a lark, I used Carol's powder on my body after I was done. I slipped into the pink panties that I had washed last night and tucked myself back between my legs. Then I put on the heavily padded panty girdle, which helped to give me a decidedly feminine contour to my hips and tush. With my maleness hidden, I looked every bit like a woman. I put on the robe that Carol had left for me and went downstairs. Carol was reading a fashion magazine in the kitchen. She said, "Mom's taking a bath. If you're done with our bathroom, I think that I'll go take mine." All finished. I just wanted to ask you to help me put my corset back on before I get too used to having it off. Sure, Crystal. Let's go upstairs. We went to my bedroom. I put on the bra that I had washed last night and I picked up the short slip that I had worn under the corset. But Carol stopped me from putting it on. "Let me get you a fresh one. That one had to have absorbed perspiration yesterday." She returned after a few minutes with a chemise that barely reached my hips. It was cut very low, and part of the bra, which was also cut very low, even showed above it. Then she helped me put on the corset. After snapping the two pieces together in the front, she went behind me and started pulling on the laces. She pulled until it was very tight. She stopped long enough for me to get used to it. We talked as I walked around the room, letting my body adapt to the confining garment again. I explained that this was the way that we had done it yesterday. After I had gotten used to it, Barbara had tightened it down until I could barely breathe. She had said that the laces and corset fabric stretched as the garment was worn. So it becomes more comfortable as you wear it and it takes the shape of your body. After about 20 minutes, Carol tightened it as much as she could. She put her knee in my back as she pulled on the laces. Then she tied them off after running them around my waist a couple of times. I could barely get my breath now, but I knew that it would get better as I wore it. She helped me to put on a full slip, and then she rolled stocking up my legs and attached them to the garter tabs that hung from the corset. I couldn't bend and would never have been able to do it without her help. She put the high heels on my feet and then the dress. She zipped up the full-length rear zipper and closed some hidden catch at the top. Mom had laid out the outfit that I would wear today. The dress was a tight, cream-colored sheath with a plunging neckline. I understand the reason for the low-cut slips now. The tops of my C-cup breasts were not only clearly visible, they stuck up out of the dress. The cream-colored, double-strap shoes that Carol had put on my feet had heels in excess of 4 inches. I could barely walk standing in front of the mirror. I was shocked at the image that I saw. From the neck down, I looked like a sexy young starlet who was out to garner publicity. The dress was so tight that you could see the garter tabs that held up the stockings. The dress showed off every curve of my fake body. Carol, I look like a hooker. Oh, don't exaggerate, Crystal. It's true that the dress is a little tight in the bust and hips. I told you that you're a little bigger than I am. Both upstairs and downstairs. What about the shoes? I can barely stand up in them. They're just regular shoes. Guys love high heels on a girl. The higher the better. I'm surprised that you never notice that most of my shoes are this high. I need the height to date the guys that I go out with. And you do look sexy in them. I don't want to look sexy. Mom said that the best way to hide you was to make you look like a sexy woman that could never possibly be mistaken for a boy. You certainly don't look like a boy with that dress on. Now, go downstairs while I take a bath. Better practice walking around so that you get used to the shoes before we leave. How am I going to walk around? The skirt is so tight that I can barely move my legs. Oh, Crystal. Stop complaining. You look wonderful. Now go downstairs and practice. With that said, she turned and went into the bathroom, closing the door behind her. I walked into the hall and carefully navigated the stairs. I spent the next half hour walking around the downstairs rooms. I even climbed and descended the stairs a dozen times to get used to doing that in these clothes. I had tried to sit down once, but it was so uncomfortable that I stood again after a few minutes and resumed walking. Please subscribe for the next part, and visit my Patreon page for early access. Patreon.com/Eden07. Link in the comment. Thanks.